The coachman drives up her driveway, halts the horses, and all the while throwing her quizzical and suspicious looks. He knocks on the mansion's door. Not an instant later, Lady Ada's butler opens the door.
My lady,
Jean-Luc says.
this is an ungodly hour.
The butler is a tall and strong man who sports a thin moustache and a hairstyle that screams immaculate care for one's image. He glances at the sun coming up over London, a few wisps of sunlight striking her clean window panes. Lady Ada steps out of the carriage. The butler takes one good look at her subtly ruffled clothes, at the shawl she wears over her head. He adds at once,
I trust the auction went well, yes?
Ungodly hour is not enough to describe this tomfoolery.
The coachman says. He is short and stout, rude, and speaks entirely too much.
Never have I seen someone fetching a sculpture before the sun rises.
I told you, man, the artists I buy from are very eccentric people.
Lady Ada explains.
They think it ill luck to sell works of art in broad daylight.
Aye,
The coachman says, not very convinced.
I figure that makes sense.
He walks to the back of the coach and lifts the rope holding a tarp. Underneath is another one of Ada's beautiful creations, or rather decreations. The ruddy man stares at it for a second and shudders.
It gives me the willies.
My lady has a very realistic taste.
Jean-Luc says, in that way of his that makes it impossible to think badly of him.
Truly you must see the artistic value it represents.
The sculpture is the size of a tall adult and has the shape of one. The subject is holding his hands across his face as if shying away from a projectile, and in his face is the look of abject horror with a hint of perversion or even satisfaction. The coachman looks away.
Yes, yes, sir. Looks very posh, very modern, yes.
Why don't you two carry it inside, you know? Make yourselves useful.
Jean-Luc gives Ada a dead look while the coachman confusedly says,
Of course, right away.
The two of them struggle to take the statue out of the coach, then struggle even harder to take it up the steps. If not for her propriety's sake, Ada would help. Even if she decides to ditch that aspect of society for today. She is wary of moving too much and exposing her clothes. There's blood in them. Blood which can prove incriminating given that night's events. Though the butler is not breaking a single sweat, the coachman's face looks like a bottle of red ink about to sizzle and burst. The two men have to rest every dozen steps or so. Ada would like to sneer and make fun of the stoic Jean-Luc, but her thoughts are unable to float to better seas. They're stuck in that realm where every action of hers is analysed and critiqued by her most severe selves. 5 women dead because she wasn't smart enough. 5 dead because she wasn't quick enough. Not to mention the others, killed by idiocy, by mimicry. Sure, she stopped one killer, but it would be hell to find all the others who were following in the footsteps of a madman.
Madame?
Jean-Luc calls. The coachman is behind him, huffing.
I'm sorry, Jean-Luc. I gather I've simply become tired.
His eyes linger on her.
I'll be sure to draw a bath as soon as the sculpture is in place.
Thank you, Jean-Luc.
The butler and the coachman finally enter Ada's favourite place in the mansion. An incredibly long corridor that parts her garden in half, with 2 rows of sculptures on each side. The Hall of Stone. The coachman whistles.
This is the bee's knees, my lady. I've sure never seen such a fine collection.
It is.
She replies, wear in her voice. She needs to sleep. She needs to rest. She needs to plan her next steps.
Now where shall we set this marvel?
The coachman slaps the sculpture. Jean-Luc points to the distance.
On the other end of the corridor, my good man.
The coachman pales, but Jean-Luc produces a small cart out of a discreet closet. The coachman relaxes his shoulders so much he turns even rounder.
Is it okay if I appreciate your collection until the statue's in place, my lady?
He asks. Ada is deadly anxious to take off her shawl. Her snakes slither, eager to relax in the open air. They are as tired as she is. Nevertheless, she says,
Sure, you've worked well tonight. You may appreciate this treat for the artistic soul.
The Hall of Stone is organised by epochs. Near the entrance, all the statues sport either armour, togas or rags. The clothes turn incredibly more European until, minutes worth of walking later, they become Victorian, in fashions very much of the present day. The coachmen get increasingly uneasy with each sculpture. All of them hold expressions of terror, fear or outright vileness, if that term can be applied to regular humans.
Very garish, but very artistic, yes.
He says.
They look very lifelike. You must have an eye for finding true talent in sculptors, though I do reckon that true appreciation of these pieces is better left for men with a better sense of art than mine, my lady.
Nonsense.
Ada tells him.
That we can all appreciate the worst moments of humanity. That's what my collection holds.
I don't mean to be rude, my lady, but shouldn't art be more aesthetic?
Who said anything about art, my good man?
Ada stops at an empty spot. She motions Jean-Luc to put the sculpture there. He and the coachman do so.
I can say this is a rather interesting model, madame.
Jean-Luc says.
May I ask who the model was?
The coachman says. Ada takes a moment to study her creation. She answers.
The most famous nobody you will ever set your eyes upon.
As soon as the coachman leaves and Jean-Luc tips him nicely for his trouble, the butler draws Ada a nice bath. The light of the morning's first hours throws the water into a pleasing yellow-orange tone. Finally, she takes off her shawl and her blue-tinted glasses and eases into the water. Her wounds bristle against the warmth, though the beautiful snakes she has for hair bask in it, diving their small heads into the water, scooping it up, letting it fall like toddlers playing. Jean-Luc stands by the window. He is fully aware of her true essence. A monster for some, a gorgon for others. For Jean-Luc, she is simply his Lady Ada, the one who saved him as a child.
May I inspect your wounds now, madame?
You may.
She sits up straighter in the tub and closes her eyes. It's a shame. She will never be able to look into the eyes of those she trusts without killing them. She hears Jean-Luc coming over and walking around her.
You're breathing fine.
I am.
Raise your arms. How do your ribs feel?
She was punched there.
Hurt and numb.
A lot?
Moderately.
Jean-Luc leans in closer and touches the snakes on her head.
One of your darlings is a little odd. Were you hit in the head?
I was twice.
Ada had had some of her darling snakes die on her in the past, and it was like losing a lifelong friend to the whims of fate. Jean-Luc disappears to the kitchen to fetch some of the whisks of rat meat he keeps at hand. He comes back and feeds the snakes, one by one, giving special attention to the one who took the brunt of the hit.
So you caught him, madame?
I did.
Did he get anyone else?
She quiets, then,
He did. A girl named Mary Jane Kelly.
Poor gal.
Jean-Luc says. He is trying to comfort her in the only way he knows how.
At least no one else will follow. You did good, madame.
Ada snorts at this and sinks into the bathwater.
Vincent killed 5 women. 5. But more were murdered because his crimes were sensationalized and there were monsters dumb enough to follow his example. More will die. I don't plan on making him more famous than he already is. I want his true name to never come up in a history book. I want him forgotten.
Vincent,
Jean-Luc tries the name in his mouth.
that's his name.
It is Vincent Tompkins, an accountant. Was a normal man. How was I supposed to find him? He lived near Whitechapel with a family that seemed healthy. He had a wife and a daughter and was well liked by friends and acquaintances. It took me weeks to even put him on my list of suspects. Goodness, Jean-Luc, these people lived with a monster without ever knowing.
Jean-Luc starts rubbing her back. By Jove, she is sore.
He was a pretender.
No, pretender doesn't cut it. Calling him a monster doesn't cut it. He was a demon, a djinn, or a vulture.
You usually aren't hurt this badly. What happened?
Before replying to that, Ada tells Jean-Luc she wants to open her eyes. Promptly, he walks back to the window overlooking their garden.
You can open them now, madame.
So she opens her eyes.
He sensed something wrong in me.
She utters a dry laugh.
A monster recognizing another in the wild.
You're no monster, madame.
I'm no human either.
Such dualities are prevalent in our society, but not in better minds. You may not be human, but that doesn't mean you are not humane. I repeat, you are no monster.
Anyway, he recognized me, sensed some kind of danger when I approached. Jean-Luc, he refused to look into my eyes. He knew there was something wrong with them. At first he ran, so I followed. As I got too close, he attacked me.
You were armed. You should have defended yourself.
Jean-Luc says, but he knows why she didn't. She hates maiming her creations. She wants them to be saved as they truly are, as they truly were. She wants to forever savour that last look of fear, or in some cases, that of acceptance. She looks beyond Jean-Luc, beyond the garden, at the rising sun. A couple of birds pass through, blocking the sun for ephemeral moments. Would it do any good? Her actions? Will they change anything? She kept hundreds of men she'd petrified in an attempt to remove their ill presence from this world. All but a small sample of the thousands she'd turned to stone in antiquity. Despite her best efforts, there are still wars. There are still horrible crimes. There are still corrupt politicians. There still is too much evil. As if reading her thoughts, Jean-Luc says,
At least you've caught him now. He won't kill anyone else now.
But he did. 5 women. Having turned Vincent to stone will never bring them back. Ada had some routines in place. There were particularly bad streets in London, bad neighbourhoods where crime was of particular regularity. Coppers always opted to circumvent those places. It was easier to ignore the worst slums than it was to protect the innocents living in them. Enter Lady Ada. Using a discreet shawl and a regular outfit made of a brown skirt and a grey undershirt, she patrolled the worst places of London. One of these places was Flower and Dean Street and the entire East End region. Ada had caught a good handful of men who abused their authority and had turned them to stone, 5 of which she sold for a hefty price as sculptures in the last year. She'd struck a casual sort of friendship with many of the prostitutes there, as well as with the women who simply stumbled on some bad times. That was how she'd first come to know Mary Ann Nichols. Nichols was a happy gal with a bad turn for alcohol and terrible luck in life. She'd had a terrible husband in her youth, a terrible job, a terrible everything. Ada was eager for the day in which she'd patrol Flower and Dean Street or Thrall Street, and Nichols would not be there, but far away in search of a better life. Instead, on the August 31st, Ada read of Nichols' death in the newspaper. Sliced throat, mutilated, repeatedly stabbed. This woman was a drunkard, but was not hated by anyone. If anything, those who knew her pitied her. Ada's experience told her the murderer had not acted in haste or anger, but out of twistedness. London Metropolitan Police set Frederick Aberline on the case after rumours of this being a serial killer emerged. But Ada knew better. Whilst the previous murders in the city were most probably related to gang violence, Nichols felt special. It felt like it was the start of something. Ada prowled like a hound during that first week of September. There was a lot of talk concerning Nichols. Some called her murder justified because she was unmarried, because she was a drunk. Her snakes went feral whenever a comment like this was passed around. The list of Ada's suspects grew, little by little. By the end of the following week, she had the names of 8 men and 3 women on her list of potential killers. Then on the morning of the 8th of September, Ada woke up after a late night to panic on East End. The body of a prostitute Ada had encountered but never spoken to, Annie Chapman, was found early in the morning. Through the morning paper and by spying in the right places, Ada pieced together the crime scene. Her coat was cut, left to right, disemboweled, intestines removed, set over her shoulders. Despite not hearing it anywhere, Ada thought it likely the killer had taken an organ. If he ripped open Annie Chapman's intestines, then it was likely he had taken a trophy. Chapman's pills, a comb, a piece of torn envelope and a frayed muslin were some of the random objects found at the crime scene. A leather apron was also left in a dish of water. The killer, Adler was sure, left the items there only to confuse the detectives and the public. Every part of the crime scene was deliberate. Each item could be traced to a different clue, leading to a different kind of suspect. The killer knew he wouldn't get caught. He'd never reveal his identity. He was making fun of everyone who thought he'd be found out one day. Whoever he was in it for the long run. Ada went after each and every one of her suspects, but none behaved in any way that would hint them as the murderers. Only a local bootmaker raised her suspicions, a man named John Pizer, who often publicly pestered women known to be prostitutes. Ada believed he had previously attacked some, but until she had solid proof, she wouldn't turn him to stone. He came to be known as Leather Apron after he was taken in as a suspect by the coppers. Ada didn't believe the man would be capable of the crimes. He was a coward. Too obviously a coward. Londoners were in a panic and newspapers only exacerbated that panic. Media was a cancer that ended up costing some people their lives. Jean-Luc notified Ada a few days later of a couple of murders in the southern part of town. People were sending letters to newspapers pretending to be the killer, some going so far as to actually kill. It got crazy fast. People broke into the police station on Commercial Road on the grounds that the coppers already knew who the killer was and were keeping him there. Rewards were offered for the head of the killer. Even a committee was founded by locals of Whitechapel. Ada herself barely slept. Her list of suspects grew every night. She'd spy over brothels, over restaurants, over alleys, over everything. Her nights were spent in blind protection of the people of Whitechapel. It got to the point where she had to bring Jean-Luc with her to make sure she stayed alert. 1 week passed, then another. Jean-Luc and she laboured over every letter that was sent to the papers, over every postcard that was possibly sent by the murderer. During the final week of September, Ada began to cut off suspects from her list until she was down to 5. 5 men whom she'd crossed more than once, roaming about in the night. It was on the 13th that her hard work paid off. Lady Ada is in her bathrobe, petting her snakes, studying the sculpture of Vincent Tompkins. There's a spot of rough texture on his shirt. Blood. Mary Jane Kelly's blood. Looking at it, Ada can hear the spurting sounds of her innards as Vincent took her apart. That visceral stench, the taste of iron permeating the very air she had breathed just hours before. The red tinge in the clothes she'd been wearing. The wetness of the blood clinging to her skin. At least she'd gotten to see horror on that monster's face. Vincent had gotten to see the inner part of her that not even Jean-Luc or Perseus had seen. Her true essence, her true appearance. She needed to become a monster to take down another. She was a monster, wasn't she?
Madame.
A reassuring hand falls on her shoulder. She immediately puts the sunglasses on and looks at Jean-Luc.
You are not like him,
he says.
I know.
What will you do now, madame?
I'll rest today. This man put London on chaos and part of that tired me by itself. I'll still have fires to put out in the next couple of weeks. There'll be copycats sprouting all over London.
You can't take them all by yourself, madame.
No, I cannot, but I can certainly try.
You should rest, madame.
So should you, John.
She tries to give him a sympathetic look, resulting in a mere sad smile. She turns around to leave.
You've been up all night.
So have you. Madame, where are you going?
To get dressed.
She replies.
To go where?
She stops, glances one last time at Vincent Tompkins, the Whitechapel murderer cast in stone.
To see her body. I want to make sure she was found. I don't want to leave her like that.
Jean-Luc relents and says,
I understand, madame. I'm going with you.
Ada was following one of her suspects, William Clarkson, a high-grade wig maker who had both royalty and previous criminals on his list of clients. Ada was blind with exhaustion, half stumbling at times. William had a liking for late-night strolls, as did every one of her suspects. She was passing Duke's place when a scream rang in the dead of night. William kept on walking as if nothing had happened, but Ada ditched him at once and sprinted towards the origin of the noise. The scream couldn't have been that loud, since she had a sense of hearing far better than any human. Whatever happened, a woman had been killed, but Ada heard no other signs of struggle. She ended up entering Mitra Square and immediately spotted a large figure in a corner shadowed by moonlight. The figure was hunched over a corpse, cutting, slashing. Ada was too late, but not too late to catch him. The moment she took a step forward, the killer went still. How the hell had he felt her? He looked up and saw Ada. He thrust a hand into the corpse's stomach twice, both times taking an organ and wrapping them in a cloth, then got up to escape.
You!
She yelled and went after him. Yet he had disappeared.
No!
Steps far away. He'd turned a corner. Blinded by rage, Ada ran, almost catching up to the man, to the killer, to that monster. He veered into a large street, empty save for him, Ada, and a confused woman. The killer was running straight in her direction. The knife in his hand glimmered against the moonlight.
Run away!
Ada yelled at the woman. The woman screamed and took a stumbling step back, her back meeting a wall.
Run!
She screamed again, but the killer ran past the woman, left hand but a blur. the knife slicing her throat. Blood spurted out the woman's neck. She put her hand to it, saw it coming away slick and red, and fainted. The killer escaped because Ada stopped by the woman, holding the wound in her neck as if her useless hands would stop life from leaving her. The wound was too wide. This woman was dead unless Ada turned her to stone. She'd still be dead, but some part of the woman would be eternal. Ada always wanted a sculpture that was beautiful, not the result of punishment, but of mercy. However, Ada heard steps approaching. The woman tried to open her eyes, convulsed, then went still. It was too late now. Defeated, Ada climbed rooftops in search of the man who'd done this, her clothes wet with the blood of an innocent. But there was no one on the street save for those now finding the bodies of the two women. The next day, Ada learned their names, Catherine Eddowes and Elizabeth Stride. Ada didn't know Stride, but she had talked to Eddowes before. She was just a regular woman, a regular human. Nothing living deserved such horrible deaths. From hell. Ada knew it hadn't been the killer to write that letter. She'd been before him. The killer was not a man to be recognised. He didn't want the acclaim, the attention for himself, but for his work. His focus was on the murders, on showing others it could be done. In his own mind, he was an artist, the murders his canvas, his subjects. But that he was from hell, he was, just like Ada was. Monsters from places better left untouched by humanity. Still, Ada did not know who the killer was. She had removed all those who didn't match the killer's body shape from her suspect list and added some others who did. The result was 6 men. All through October, she worked hard to discover which one of them was the killer, to no avail. Every single night was spent making rounds throughout London, checking on each subject. Every single night, she was disappointed. In her wanderings, she turned 2 men into stone. One was abusing his wife, whilst another a young boy. Jean-Luc sold both sculptures. Ada couldn't keep every single wrongdoer her snakes caught. She only kept the most vile ones in the Hall of Stone, to remind herself of what the race that had killed her sisters was capable of. On the 1st of November, Francis Tumblety, one of her main suspects and a con man, went for a night stroll. He repeated it on the 2nd. On the 3rd day of the month, Vincent Tompkins, an accountant who worked by the docks, also left his home. Neither carried weapons, nor cloaks, nor anything that could be considered suspicious. She divided her next nights between following one and the other and memorising the paths they liked to take. It was tiring work, but worth it, for on Friday the 9th she first went to check on Francis. He did his usual round. Ada ran for 20 minutes until she found Vincent, only to see he was in none of his usual paths, and he had certainly not gone back home. The moon had a red sheen to it that night, making Ada see blood in every corner she glanced at. It was a crimson night. Something was wrong with the very feel of the air, with the very fabric of reality. Vincent was carrying no weapon visibly. He could very well be hiding an arsenal of blades underneath his suit. Ada searched and searched, ears always open for screams. She heard none. In the end, what brought her to the murderer was nothing but dumb luck. passing through what was possibly one of the worst slums in London, Dorset Street in Spitalfields. Ada caught sight of a room illuminated by a fireplace. Though it was night as of yet, the sun would rise short of an hour hence, so the city was at its quietest, except that room with the burning fire. Slowly Ada made her way there, careful not to be heard, noticed, or even felt by that man. The door to this room was unlocked. From behind Ada came the crimson shine of the moon, as if a vengeful god was watching her every move. From the fringes of the door came the mellow glow of the fire. The killer would have nowhere to go. He'd have to go through her. She had him trapped. With a nimble push, the door opened. The first thing that hit her was the stench of torn intestines and blood, like copper and spoiled water. The second thing was the sound. The killer had heard her, but he hadn't stopped what he'd been doing. The third was the shape of the woman. Despite the mutilations on her face, Ada knew her. She'd seen her around Flower and Dean Street. Her name was Mary Jane Kelly, and she was a pretty girl. Kind. Funny. She didn't deserve this. Kelly's stomach was torn open. The contents of her insides were strewn around the room. Her legs were butchered. Ada could see their bone. The killer was cutting Kelly's breasts off. He'd finished cutting one, held it, steadied it against the light of the fire, then threw it on the floor. It fell with a meaty, wet thunk. He got started on cutting the other. Vincent Tompkins was blonde, wore a full respectable beard, and he was grinning, showing perfect teeth.
You finally caught me, eh?
He said. His voice was low, guttural.
Why?
Was all she managed to say.
Did you bring a gun? Will you kill me now? Do you have any weapons?
He kept his eyes on his hands, on his blade.
Look at me,
Ada said. He chuckled.
I don't think I will.
She shook off her shawl, her glasses.
Look at me.
She stepped forward and closed the door. He collectedly finished cutting the breast off. He grabbed it, held it, and threw it in front of the fireplace, which had clothes fueling the fire. Vincent glanced at her through a mirror in Kelly's room.
I thought so. Not human, eh? What do they call you? Medusa, in it?
Leave my sister's name out of your forsaken mouth. Look at me.
He got up and wiped the blood from his blade with his gloves. Suddenly, he charged at her, shoulder first, hard, against her ribs, throwing her back, breaking the door's hinges open. He ran. Ada, however, had been ready for it. Cornered prey acted desperate, and her body wasn't as frail as a human's. Sure, she'd been bruised, but she could still move. She was on her feet in an instant. She sprinted, but Vincent was waiting around a corner. He punched her in the head. She fell. He kicked her in the head twice. He kicked her in the stomach before she had an instant to gather her thoughts. He was about to stomp her skull when she caught his boot.
You hurt one of my snakes.
You damning monster. You and her and all of them are just the same. I am going to purify this world. I am going to...
Ada held his leg so hard it cut blood flow and shut him up.
Monster. Don't make me laugh, you little man.
Ada rose to her feet. Vincent closed his fist to punch her, but Ada grabbed his chin and threw his head against a wall. She permitted the snakes in her head to come apart, dividing her body in half, like her garden. Her skin coming undone to reveal her truth.
What are you?
You don't deserve to know,
she said.
But if you open your eyes, you will see what you could have one day become, a true monster.
At once, he did. Horror threatened to overwhelm his life before his heart could turn to stone. and I hope you enjoy the blooper reel. The butler is a tall and... Jean-Luc says, in that way of his... Jean-Luc says, in that way of his, that makes it... If not for her propriety... If not for her propriety... Blood, which can prove incriminating... Ada would like to smear... The clothes turn incredibly more... Ada had some of it... Jean-Luc disappears to the kitchen to fetch some of the whisks of red meat. She kept hundreds of men she'd petrified in an attempt to... Using a discreet shawl and a regular outfit made of brown skirt. While the previous murders in the city were... He was making fun of everyone who thought he'd... He was making fun of everyone who thought he'd find... Fucking motherfucker. Who often publicly pestered women known to be prostitutes. Lady Ada is in her bathrobe, getting a high-grade wig mater. He veered into a large street, say... It was tiring work, but worth it. For on Friday the 9th, she went... Though it was night as of yet, the sun would rise soon. Vincent glanced at... Hey family, a very big thank you to Scary in a Box for allowing me to narrate this awesome story. Be sure to check out his Reddit for more awesome stories. If you would like to support us and make a donation, I'd be very much appreciative. I do have PayPal and a Buy Me a Coffee account. You can also follow us. All my socials and all my other links are contained within the Linktree link below. Take care everyone, and I hope you all have a wonderful and peaceful night. And don't forget, where fear is, happiness is not.